Okay, so today is going to be kind of quick. We're not going to cover everything that's in every chapter of these. Chapter 12, Disaster Recovery and Troubleshooting. So how do you guys troubleshoot? Have you developed a troubleshooting technique? Because I can tell you what works for me, and what works for me won't necessarily work for you. But all of this modular stuff that we talked about, the OSI model and networking, what's not working? The modular approach to a computer starting and a computer processing, what's not working? That's what a lot of the troubleshooting is about. You get things like, hey, I can't get to, actually my favorite is, the network's down. And you go look, and is the network really down? Oh, I can't get to Google, or I can't get to Yahoo, or I can't get to Facebook. Well, but I can get to the server. Has that now kind of limited to the things that you need to look at for the network troubleshooting?
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit. One of the things that probably you could look at is maybe DNS. Is DNS working? Because if you can't resolve those things, or I can get to some place, and this is something that you're probably going to have to do, I can get to some place using the IP address, but I can't get there using the fully qualified domain name. And when we talk about fully qualified domain name, the fully qualified domain name, the NetBIOS name appended to a domain is different than the single name. You might be able to get to something with the single name, and I have that happen in Active Directory a lot, is, golly, I can ping if I just use the single name of the server, I can communicate with it, but when I try to use a fully qualified domain name, nothing happens. And if that happens, Active Directory doesn't work, because the fully qualified domain name is what's required there. That goes back to now DNS isn't working. So what is and what isn't working? I'm not going to try to tell you how to troubleshoot. I think that's something that, honestly, you really got to develop on your own. There's a number of tools in here to allow you to do that. The other is disaster recovery. Back in one of the chapters, and each of the courses have different chapter numbers, we talked about RAID. A lot of people think about RAID as their backup. RAID is not a backup. RAID is data redundancy, so that if a hard drive fails, you can keep running. Disaster recovery is you come to work on Friday and the building's not there. What are you, as the network administrator, going to do in order to be able to, I'm just kidding, in order to be able to recover your data? What have you done? That's what disaster recovery is all about, and that's something that a lot of businesses don't do very well. And there's some statistics out there. Businesses that lose all their data, 65% of them go out of business within a year of losing that information. Why? Don't have a backup. Can't recover something you don't have. A lot of people just don't back up. Or I've seen say, hey, we used to have a guy here say, I do a spinning backup and it's right there. Okay, so what if the sprinkler system goes off in the knock? And you got your servers right there, and you got your backup right next to it. Does that help you with disaster recovery? You want backup to be off-site. And in a lot of businesses, industries, there are legal requirements that you do that. 9/11, there were some businesses that were up and running the next day, some mutual funds. There were some that I don't think have ever come back. The problem that they got into there, off-site, like John said, they had companies that would come in and do backups for you. And they would store the backups off-site. Unfortunately, they were in the same area as the tower, so a lot of the backups got destroyed along with the businesses themselves. So disaster recovery, is it a big deal at home? Yeah, could be. For those of you who have spouses, just lose all those pictures.
Yeah, right.
Just lose all those pictures and see what the response is. Where can you back this stuff up? You notice I'm not using the slides here a whole lot. Where can you back this stuff up? Flash drive, but what do you do with your flash drive? You got to. I saw a lot of people running around with USB hard drives.
Flash drive in a fire safe box or something.
Fire safe box. Do you really have to do a fire safe box? What if you online services? That's certainly a way.
Box.com, Google.
Box.com. Box.com is kind of an interesting one, by the way, that I stumbled across. 20 gig of extra storage. Mega Upload, who still has a lot of people. That's the downside of these things. Mega Upload got taken offline. Was everybody that's using Mega Upload doing something illegal?
No.
There's a lot of businesses still trying to get their data back. So you do have to be careful of where you put your information.
Personal information about
External hard drives, absolutely. But if you take that external hard drive and you save the information at home, what do you need to do with the external hard drive or James's flash drive? Store it someplace else. Take it to work.
Take it to a safety deposit box.
Take it to a safety deposit box. But what I do is back the stuff up at home, put it on a DVD, the pictures, put it on a DVD, and then I put it in the top drawer of my desk back here. You can encrypt it. Depends on what you have. Do I really need to encrypt my pictures? Odds are against it.
For you, probably.
Maybe for your pictures, yeah. My pictures I don't need to encrypt. You walked into that one,
Yeah,
I guess.
I don't care who sees me at the park with my family.
Yeah. So I mean, but if you're talking about what about your tax forms?
Escrow papers.
Escrow paper. There are a number of things. Most of these things, like Dropbox, say that they encrypt. Do they? They say they do. I can't dispute that. But they keep the key. If they keep the encryption key,
how do you know whether or not?
How do you know whether they're not, or who can then get the information? They claim the reason they use the encryption key in case they get a subpoena from the government, so that they can give them all your information. So be careful where you do this. In the big cloud world that we live in, the other issue may become, where's your data actually stored? Cloud computing, where is your data actually stored for real?
Who knows?
Who knows is the real answer. Could be anywhere. A number of companies are starting now to build, because of some of the individual laws in different countries, starting to build backup sites in Switzerland because of the Swiss laws, so that they figure they can always be able to get to their data there. So, disaster recovery and data redundancy, two different things. Troubleshooting is a logical step-by-step process where you look at what's going on using your knowledge, and as you go through your experience, what is it? This machine here, I think at Everett's at, sometimes when you try to log on, it gives you this really clever message, right? It says, authentication server not available. There are a number of things that could cause that. DNS can't find it. All three domain controllers offline, that's what the authentication server is. The more logical solution, since everybody else in the room gets logged on, is something wrong with that individual machine. And in that individual machine, the simplest thing to do is to check to be sure that the wire's plugged into the NIC, because they get sometimes damage, pull. Anybody ever tripped over a wire, or almost tripped over a wire, rolled over a wire in any of these rooms? It happens. We try to keep them out of the way, but those kinds of things happen. Connections become corroded in a high humidity environment, or any humidity environment, over time if they stay plugged in for a long time. Sometimes you just unplug it and plug it back in, it'll fix it, because you got to remember we're talking about really low voltages in these things. So the objectives, general principles of troubleshooting. What are the general principles of troubleshooting? And this is always, not always, but this is more of a CompTIA, honestly, question than it is a Microsoft question. Or in a Microsoft world, what do you do? How do you troubleshoot?
What the problem is?
What's the problem? What's it not doing? Identify the problem. And then we're going to go through the find the solutions. Is it reproducible is one of the other things. Find the solution, apply the solution, and then document. The last step is something that most of us, and I'll plead guilty, don't do real well, is the document portion. You guys always document your solutions? What about at home? You just fix it and move on, right? And then it happens again. You say, boy, well, what happens to us is we'll solve the problem and it doesn't get documented real well, and 2 or 3 years later, same thing happens. Say, yeah, we fixed that about 2 years ago, but I forgot what we did. So if you do document these things, the way to do that. Backup and restore. When you do the backup and restore, there's going to be a number of options that are available to you. One of the options is to create an image of your machine. That would allow you to restore it intact. What you really need to back up is your data, isn't it? Although Windows 7 has made the restoration process much simpler than 2003 and Windows 2008 Server, than XP and 2003 Server, because in the old systems in Windows XP, the first thing you had to do to restore a backup was install Windows XP. If you looked at the options when you did the install, one of those options was to restore. And that's to restore from an image, restore from a backup. So you can boot to the installation media, take your backup, the system image that you have, and actually restore that image. It's made it a lot simpler. There are third-party software that you could always do that with the NT backup system. Major tools used to repair Windows 7, I'm going to leave most of that to your reading. Those are like defrags and check disks and those kinds of tools that are available. And the system tools that assist in preventive maintenance operations, I guess that I jumped ahead on, defrag is going to be one of those. Advanced troubleshooting area. So, troubleshooting, systematically diagnose. Once the problem's understood, potential solutions are suggested, investigated, what works, what doesn't work. Is it reproducible? How many places is it happening? And that's one of the things in your troubleshooting. If you're in a network environment and it's only happening to one individual, odds are kind of against it being something else, is it not? What if everybody can't get someplace? Everybody can't log in. Then we got to find some common element. In a room like this, common element probably is something like the switch.
So we potentially like one computer versus a server or a switch?
One computer versus a server or switch, or service. Okay. And the service that I want to go to is DNS in an Active Directory environment, because if DNS doesn't function properly, Active Directory doesn't work. If you don't have the correct DNS server selected or selected for you when we use the DHCP addressing, Active Directory doesn't work. Could those machines be down? Yes. And when we get into the Active Directory courses, are there other things that can happen? Yeah, are they replicating correctly, talking to each other? What's actually being used for any of these things? Information collection. A number of different tools, automated tools may fix it. Windows has a tendency that if it tries to do something and it doesn't work, it'll kind of back off and try something else. The one thing that it won't back off and try is if you get a bad DNS lookup, can't find it or whatever, that gets cached. If you get a good DNS lookup, that gets cached. And back to the IP config, flush DNS if you want to start over from the caching programs. But if you get and this is more in a troubleshooting environment, if you're changing things in your Active Directory, you may have to flush that DNS in order to allow you to continue with your troubleshooting by using that service. Now, I want to go back to that. One of the new tools that's available. Has anybody used the Problem Steps Recorder? Anybody heard of Problem Steps Recorder? It's something that can be used if somebody's having a problem. You turn that on and you go to the run line and type PSR. You start it and it records everything that happens, the mouse clicks basically. You can also, if you wanted to make a step-by-step document for somebody to do things, you can use this to record the steps. Take a look at that one. It's another one of those that is handy. It's kind of like the snipping tool that, it's like when I ask people to use it, a lot of people say, I don't know what this is. Snipping tool, I think, is one of the really kind of neat things that they did. They actually bought that from somebody else. They're snipping. Sniffing would be like Wireshark. Snipping tool, you cut out a portion of the, copy a portion of the screen. It's kind of like a print screen, except you get to control what you want.
I know some computers, print screen button doesn't work
here.
It doesn't work.
I agree. You know why?
Because you can cheat on your test.
Well, you want to know the whole story?
No, dude.
Well, the so you can't cheat has something to do with it. A couple of years ago, 18 months ago, a class of non-technical students decided that one class had taken the test and the other class hadn't, that they would do a print screen and then email all the questions to the class that hadn't taken the test. Ooh. Not good. So we created a policy. We created a policy to disable print screen. That's why it doesn't work. There is a reason for all of this stuff. When you get into managing a network, you're going to start doing stuff and people say, why did you do that? There's always a reason to do that. Is that the quick way? Just like the Facebook policy. Why did we do that? Because they made it available in the library and then somebody figured out that they go to HTTPS instead of HTTP, and HTTPS is much more difficult to control with a proxy server. It looks like a man-in-the-middle attack, which it is. And so we had to create a policy, an IPsec policy, to block those addresses. And just a couple of days ago, last week, back in Heather's seat, somebody said, oh, I can get to Facebook from here. Facebook just bought a bunch more IP addresses. So now you got to go change your policy. That's another thing. When you do these things, they say that you always need to be updating Active Directory, kind of. What you really need to pay attention to what's changed. Has somebody changed something to make it not work for you? But Problem Steps Recorder, take a look at that. That's something that can be handy in your troubleshooting, or if you want to make a step-by-step for somebody to do something, it'll record stuff for you and then you can annotate it. System information. There was still around a piece of software called SIW, which will kind of drill down and look at the information on the machine. This is something that's very similar to that. And if you want to run that, just go to the run line and the run search line and type system, and it'll eventually come up with System Information Manager. Something that's handy to see what's on the machine. I feel kind of like SIW. This does something very similar to that, and you can export it to text file, what's there. This is all part of establishing a baseline, kind of, sort of, too. And what's there, what's not there, what information do we have about our machines, and then you can email, says the file can be emailed to another technician so that they can check and look and see what's on that system. Computer management, looked at that a little bit already, all right? A couple of things that are handy there are shared files, what's shared. See that one that you guys will do, did do, have do, look at, because you did in the lab, the share. Do I really want to go look at all that stuff? I just go in and use the tools in order to do those things with. What's shared and what's not shared. Task scheduler, you looked at that. A number of tasks are scheduled for you already. If you'll look in there, Windows does some stuff for you automatically now. Like defrag is automatically configured to run. Anybody remember? Wednesdays at 2 o'clock, something like that. When you install your antivirus checker, if you tell it to run a scan at a particular time, that becomes part of task scheduler also. You can run whatever you want, whenever you want. Event Viewer allows us to look at logs, and they've got a bunch of pictures on what that looks like as you go through there. You can filter logs through it. It is one of those tools that's going to allow you to take these hundreds of pages worth of logs. I was just looking at mine over here. I was going to show you the one on this machine, but the security log wouldn't load because it had like 70,000 entries, which means that we're not really paying a lot of attention to it. Do we pay a lot of attention to individual machines around here? Not unless we really have a problem. Do we pay attention to servers? Yes, more so. What's going on the server? And those are the ones that generally you're going to be concerned with. Individual machines, if something happens to it, you need to go back and look at the logs. You need to be able to go back and see what happens in the logs. How do you look at those things? So this is something that is available, will help you in your troubleshooting of why is it broke kind of deal. I'm kind of dense. I'm actually very dense, but the last place that I usually look when I can't figure anything else out is look in the log. Well, that may be one of the earlier places you want to look, because a lot of times something that's a problem is going to show up there early on that will help you in your troubleshooting process. The performance console, this is one, the performance that's not going to work on the virtual machines, I think, because you can try that. It may, because it doesn't really record this stuff. But what this does is keeps track of the reliability, for lack of a better word. Performance reliability monitor is what it is. And anything that happens, it's going to kind of give you an indication. On this machine, let's see if we can see if I can get it going here as it searches. Performance monitor. I really do like the Windows 7 search capability. Windows 8 is even quicker. So we go into the performance monitor here. That's not what I'm looking for, data collector sets. It's not going to show me what I want to see, is it? So the performance console, the real-time device manager, the things that you've looked at, disk management. I think that at this point in the collection, Action Center, what's there, what's not there. Sometimes Microsoft will give you a hint on what you can and can't do with that one. One of the places that you do need to learn how to use is support Microsoft and technet.microsoft.com. TechNet has lots of information that's available. Back to the, yes, I really want to keep this book. Well, okay, but why? Because the book probably not going to be updated. The websites are going to be updated as new information changes, as service packs get installed, as things change on the system itself. Solution guidelines. First one's be patient. How many of you are patient? And I do not include myself there. You've never seen me troubleshoot one. If it doesn't start working, I start screaming at them. Yeah, makes me feel better, but it doesn't do a whole lot. Doesn't do a whole lot for the system itself. One of the things that you do have to be is patient, because the first thing you try ain't going to work, and so many things require a reboot, and it takes so long to fix a lot of these problems, to find out what's actually going on with the system itself. Isolation and all of the things that we talked about there. What I want to get to, the common solutions, is the backup and restore. The backing up part, let me go to a virtual machine here, I hope. the other virtual machine here. I started this because it takes a few seconds, a little bit of time for these to start. What you got to do is go to the backup and restore and start the service. Once you get to the service, we can here create a system image, create a system repair disk. Or we can set up backup, and that's going to be one of the first things that's going to show up. One of the issues with this is this one won't back up to tape. So it won't back up to tape. That's one of the things that change between this one and the other ones.
Is there a way you can alter that in it?
This one will not back up to tape. It will back up to, and as you can see here, the hard drive, the util, which is someplace else. And if I go to the computer itself, it also won't back up to the C drive. And I have a fat partition here, and it won't back up to a fat partition because that wouldn't show up. The only one that showed up was my util drive. You can back it up to a USB drive. You can back it up to a lot of different locations. You can back it up to a network share, which is probably what you want to do back to the off-site backup situations. What are we going to do with there? You can back it up off-site. There are third-party softwares, and that may be actually where Microsoft was going because many people, instead of using the built-in, the freeware version here, would go and buy a third-party software. So first we have to pick a location, or down here we could save it to the network. So we're going to save it to the hard drive, and then we have let Windows choose or let me choose. If I choose, then I get the choice of libraries, and then on the drive itself, which folders I want to back up. If you let Windows choose, it's basically going to back up everything, except for the page file, which you really don't want to back up because it's going to be a big area. The other one is the system repair disk. The system repair disk here, you can go through that. If the repair disk that could be created didn't find a CD DVD burner, that's where that one has